The UK is getting its 7th Prime Minister in a decade. Thanks for joining this DW News live stream. My name's Jared Reid. We are live on TikTok, YouTube and TV as we wait for Andy Burnham to stand outside number 10 Downing Street and deliver his first speech as Britain's new Prime Minister. Please do send us in your questions and comments as we talk about what has been a pretty remarkable rise to power for someone who only returned to Parliament just a few weeks ago. Andy Burnham is a former mayor of Greater Manchester and takes over as Prime Minister from the unpopular Keir Starmer, who in the last few minutes has been to see the King and offer his resignation, which has been accepted. Keir Starmer suffered an uprising with his Labour Party that forced him to resign both as party leader and Prime Minister. We are here to bring you Andy Burnham's first speech live, the moment that he steps out as Prime Minister and lays out his vision for the UK. So please do send us in your questions and comments. But while we wait for him to appear, we can speak to DW's Birgit Mass, who's outside Downing Street for us. And also it's great to have Dr. Mark Shanahan, who's a research fellow in politics and international relations from the University of Surrey. Welcome to both of you. Birgit, we're going to start with you. I guess Westminster has seen this pretty often over the past decade. We're talking about another UK Prime Minister taking office. Just tell us, why is this happening yet again?
Well, Jared, the UK really has been quite an unstable country, and you have to say it started really with Brexit. So 10 years ago, the UK decided to leave the European Union, and that was a momentous decision by the British public, over which you have to say really several prime ministers stumbled. So the politics around Brexit, and then trying to now manage the relations with the European Union, but also manage the country, who over Brexit became quite polarized. You then had also obviously COVID, and then that makes for volatility, I would say, in Britain that we haven't seen before, and that's why we have with Andy Burnham the seventh Prime Minister in 10 years. So that is quite something. And the hope here in Britain is that he can bring stability back to the country. He obviously doesn't serve a full term. He's only got 3 years left. And today will be his big day. He hoped that he has the momentum and that he can make a fresh start. And what he wants is to bring new hope to the country.
That's right. And as we talk to both of you, we are waiting for Andy Burnham to be appointed as Prime Minister by King Charles. This is a formality that has to take place as he will lead the King's government. Mark Shanahan from the University of Surrey, it's great to see you. I'm wondering if you might also like to reflect on, particularly on the why of this moment.
It's the impatience of the country. As Birgit has already said, ever since Brexit, we've become much more impatient. We've also kind of celebritized politics, so it becomes less about the issues and more about the personalities. And in this case, it's the personality who is going to get Labour re-elected to government when the next election happens in 2029. Labour has a huge majority in Parliament. They now have a new Prime Minister in Andy Burnham, and he is seen as somebody who can carry through with that majority, with the mandate the people gave in 2024, and win another election. The paradox was that even with this massive majority, Keir Starmer was not seen as somebody who could win another election. So make no bones about it, this is a coup within Labour. Keir Starmer lost the confidence both of his own party, and I think he'd already lost the confidence of the country. And while he was at a weak ebb, there was an engineered by-election at Makefield up in the northwest of England. Andy Burnham, who'd previously been a cabinet minister but had then left Parliament to become a regional mayor, returned as an MP. As an MP, he could fight for the Labour leadership. It turned out to be not a fight at all, in that nobody stood against him. And on the morning that he goes to see the King at Buckingham Palace, Andy Burnham is celebrating his own coronation last Friday as the new leader of the Labour Party. And as of a few minutes ago, he was asked by the King to form a new government. And that's what he will be doing.
That's right. And we are seeing these live pictures of Buckingham Palace where Andy Burnham in the last few minutes has been appointed Britain's new Prime Minister by King Charles. We're waiting for him to very shortly, I guess, walk outside the door. You can see on your screens like right now, get into the car, drive, I think about around a mile to number 10 Downing Street, where he will be speaking and where he will outlay, I guess, his vision for the United Kingdom. We've just heard we've just heard Mark Shanahan, talk about, I guess, the impatience of the Labor Party, and he's described it as a coup within the Labor Party. Mark, I just want to follow up on that. I guess this reflects, a public sentiment that the UK has and many other countries have too, where they are very impatient and unhappy with their politicians at this particular point in time. We've seen what has been described as a revolving door in the UK of one Prime Minister after another. How long does Andy Burnham realistically have to show that he is trying to do things that will make a difference to UK voters, particularly, I guess, when it comes to the big issue of cost of living?
Yeah, his honeymoon is going to be very short. He's quite lucky in that Parliament has just gone into recess for the summer. So he won't face PMQs, parliamentary questions. He won't have to face the opposition across the chamber. But he will have to come out quickly to show he has a united team behind him, that he has a plan. Keir Starmer was accused when he came into government of not having a plan. Whatever Burnhamism turns out to be, he has to make that clear to the people quickly. He'll return to Parliament in September and face the first scrutiny from MPs. At the end of September, he'll make a really big speech at the Labour Party conference. So that's all about getting his own party on side firmly behind him. And then the big issue for him will be getting through the autumn budget. How does he work out the finances for the coming year? What's going to happen with tax? What's going to happen with spending? What's going to happen with the public services? That happens in October, and that's probably by that time his honeymoon will be over and people will just be expecting him to deliver, if he's going to deliver at all.
All right, let's take a little bit of a step back. Birgit, we'll go back to you. You're standing outside Downing Street. A lot of people watching right now, they might have seen or heard of Andy Burnham, but it's going to be the first time that they will hear him speak and possibly speak in a comprehensive way. Just tell us, who is Andy Burnham and how did he go from, I guess, being Mayor of Manchester to very quickly being Prime Minister?
Yeah, he's dubbed the King of the North because that's what he was. He was a mayor of Manchester, so somebody who wasn't really on the international stage, but more on a very geographically located stage in Manchester. He was popular there, or he is still very popular there. He managed to grow the economy, and at the same time in inner city Manchester, there was a reduction in poverty. And the hope is that Labour MPs will have the hope that he can also steer the British economy in the same lucky way. Of course, it's on a much different scale, so it's a much bigger challenge for him. Personality-wise, I think we will see a big contrast to Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer giving his farewell speech at the lectern here in Downing Street, but Andy Burnham, we're expecting him to speak without the lectern, to speak freely, and he's somebody who has a reputation of being very relatable, very warm, with empathy, and somebody who is really good on social media, who's really good connecting with people in many ways. And I think this is what a lot of Labour MPs are hoping for, that he will be able to sell the Labour message better than Keir Starmer did. Keir Starmer was seen as slightly technocratic, maybe a little stiff, and Andy Burnham has a very different mannerism about him. And I think that's what the Labour MPs are hoping, that he's able to reach out to the public in a much different way.
Yeah, and we've just seen Andy Burnham leave Buckingham Palace after being appointed the new UK Prime Minister. Mark, we've just heard Birgit talk about Andy Burnham trying to sell the Labor message, and we will hear that message, I expect, in the next couple of minutes as he does drive back to number 10 Downing Street. What is it that you are most looking out for in this speech that we're about to hear?
Two things, really. The first is style. Very much as Birgit said, he's a better communicator, and we'll be looking for that connection. But I'll be looking for political nous too. Keir Starmer was not a good political player. At heart, he's a lawyer. He's very, very cautious. He didn't really have strong political instincts. Andy Burnham seems to have more political instinct. And it's about making the connections with people around affordability, around growth. He's talked about growth in every postcode. How is that going to happen? We're probably not going to get any detail in this speech. It will be about drawing Britain together. It will be about bringing about success and doing it in a Labour way. When he spoke on Friday, he spoke very much about getting back to Labour politics, progressive politics. For the last 2 years, we've had kind of continuity conservatism, where Keir Starmer hasn't really made much of a break from the previous government. We might begin to see some signs today from Andy Burnham in what he says in his speech in a few minutes when he arrives in Downing Street, what he does later in the day in his appointments to cabinet, which will point to, despite being in the restrictions of a mandate set 2 years ago, doing things a little bit differently, doing things more for everyday people, for working people, not just for the wealthy and for big business.
What's the tension between taking over in the manner that he has done from Keir Starmer and, I guess, trying to demonstrate continuity while also, aggressively pushing their reform agenda, as Andy Burnham is trying to do?
Yeah, it's not changing all of the faces and all of the policies immediately. It's working at some speed, certainly over this recess period over the summer. It's bringing in some new faces, but it's reassuring the markets with a degree of continuity. It's trying to bring the various factions, and there are many, in the Labour Party together so that they're working with him and for him and not against him, as they were with Keir Starmer. There was no such thing as Starmerism, and he pretty much united all of the factions of the party against him. Burnham comes in with a lot of goodwill, with a degree of momentum from his success in Manchester, but faces all of the problems that Starmer faced around the economy, around war in Ukraine, war in the Middle East, the difficult relationship with Donald Trump, for instance, working much closer with the EU. And he's got to make a success of all of that in a fairly short time. But he's in Downing Street now, so let's see what he does.
He is, and we are watching these pictures of a convoy of what look to be Land Rovers, the very traditional British vehicle, pulling up to number 10 Downing Street. Very shortly, we are going to be hearing a speech from the new British Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, who is going to lay out his vision for the UK. Usually at these moments, we are used to seeing the new Prime Minister stand in front of a lectern. But as Birgit was saying earlier, more in keeping with his laid-back style, possibly that will not be what we are seeing from Andy Burnham today. He is there shaking hands with what appear to be a number of Labour Party staffers as he has returned from getting the formal go-ahead from Britain's King Charles. And as Mark was saying, Keir Starmer, the outgoing or the now former British Prime Minister, was criticised for not really having a plan when he came into office, and that is sort of what eroded his political capital very quickly in the last 2 years after he won a landslide election victory in 2024. Andy Burnham will be seeking to, I guess, learn from some of those mistakes and use some of the political instinct that he's honed over the last 2 decades he has had in public life. Also, he was a minister in both the Blair and the Gordon Brown governments. Then he left Westminster and became the mayor of Greater Manchester until very recently, when he was essentially parachuted into a seat in a by-election in the seat of Makerfield, which he won, and has now, in the space of a month or so, become British Prime Minister. And I guess, Birgit, we can go to you. You're just around the corner from where we can see Andy Burnham. Just talk us through what the atmosphere is like. Lots of happy faces and clapping people there.
Yes, and I've had somebody sing the Ode to Joy. So there are quite a lot of police here, and they are managing large crowds. And I think there's no amplified music allowed, but somebody was singing the European anthem, Ode to Joy. And I think that symbolizes that some people are hoping that Andy Burnham will take the UK closer again to the European Union. But that's obviously just some people. Most people where I am, quite happy. They want to see a new prime minister, and not that many dissenters here today. From what I can see, people are lobbying on climate. There are some outstanding issues, whether new oil and gas fields will be explored in the North Sea, and there is a decision outstanding, and people are. The people that are here lobbying for climate are urging him not to allow anything. So this is one type of people. We've also seen a lot of activists go in, party activists, and I spoke to some were actually from Manchester, from the north. So for those people who are the party activists from that area, they really hope that he will make good on his promise to also be somebody who looks after not just London, but who looks after other regions in the UK, and that's something that Andy Burnham has promised to do.
Prime Minister Andy Burnham, who is walking up to the microphones. Let's hear from him now.
I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government. In doing so, I am acutely conscious that I am the 6th person in the last 10 years to walk up this street, the 7th Prime Minister since 2016. Making this a moment for reflection and new resolution. It requires my generation of politicians to raise our game and rise to the new challenge. Britain needs to show the world that we can regain our stability once again, and that is our challenge. To make politics work, to make it work better. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be. We will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years. A new political model and a new economic model. In the 1980s, Britain took some wrong turns. Political power was centralised, economic power privatised. Large parts of the country deindustrialised and they still haven't recovered. Many feel as though they're still in decline and they don't have the ability to turn things around. And that's why we will change politics, to make it more collaborative, more about problem solving than point scoring. And we will take power out of here and carry it into every postcode in the land so that they can do more. And in doing more, build a new economy where we put life's essentials back under stronger public control to make them affordable to you again. Reindustrialising Britain, using public procurement to back British industry. Later this year, I will bring forward a new plan for Britain, a 10-year plan, laying out a path from where we are now to where I believe we all want Britain to be, wherever we're coming from, whatever party we support. But I can do something to give people some breathing space now, some help with the cost of living. And I will set out some of those measures starting tomorrow, including how we pay for them. We will help more young people into work by changing the education system and giving them more support, more mental health support. And we will build more council homes. That is the fair and sustainable way to bring the welfare bill down, to meet our fiscal rules and to honour our commitments on defence to our international partners. We will help people to live well, building a more preventative state, investing in people's success rather than paying for failure. And that work starts now. I will soon go through that door behind me and issue my first instruction to end rough sleeping in our country. It's about putting the right values and the right standards at the heart of government. I will put the care of people at the heart of everything I do. I will give this my all, and I ask you all to pull with me. Let's build a new national sense of unity, of common purpose and positivity. Let us make this the moment when Britain starts to believe again, the moment we bring back hope. Thank you very much, everybody.
Watching the first speech of the new British Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, who has stood outside that famous black door at number 10 Downing Street and outlay his vision, his initial plan for his first days in office as British Prime Minister. Just moments ago, he gave that speech earlier. He was appointed Prime Minister by King Charles. Burnham, I guess, began by saying he was acutely aware of the turmoil of the last decade or so in UK politics and called on politicians to raise their game and said that people had been fed up with politics, that it had not been good enough. And he said that he will make this moment a circuit breaker for Britain with a new political model and a new economic model, and outlaid his plans to, I guess, devolve power out of Westminster and bring it in a more equal way across the country. He talked about reindustrialising Britain and said that he would shortly be unveiling his 10-year plan for Britain and that he would be announcing cost of living measures starting tomorrow, things like building more council homes and things like that. Though his first act as Prime Minister, when he does walk through that door, he says says will be to end rough sleeping in Britain. We are joined in this live stream by Birgit Maas, who is outside number 10 Downing Street for us, and also Dr. Mark Shanahan from the University of Surrey. Birgit, you're there. You're just around the corner from number 10. Just tell us what your initial takeaways are from Andy Burnham's first speech.
Well, that was a rather short speech and really not very deep on any detail. He said that he's going to come up with a 10-year plan, but not just yet. He said later in the year. And of course, there were many people here in the UK who told him, you have to really seize the moment as soon as you entered number 10 Downing Street for the first time, because this is where you're at your most powerful. So I think some people might be a bit disappointed that he doesn't come in with any more detail other than what he has told us all along, that he wants to have a different kind of politics. He wants to be more collaborative. He said there's be less point scoring. However, that doesn't just require the will of Andy Burnham and the new Prime Minister, but that requires also other people to play ball, if you want, with that. And we don't have any indication of how that will go. So as to really concrete policies, how he wants to do something about the deindustrialization of the UK that started in the 80s and that hasn't really been remedied, he hasn't really said anything about that. And of course, it's a problem that's well known, and other Prime Ministers have also looked into it and have tried to do something about it. So yes, so we will have to wait and see how exactly he's going to tackle these problems that he's been describing today now.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Mark Shanahan from the University of Surrey. Usually when we hear these speeches, if I cast my mind back, they are longer than what we've heard from Andy Burnham. This was a very short speech, not a lot of detail, not a lot of concrete policies, as Birgit was saying. What are your initial takeaways from what you just heard?
It's a couple of things. It wasn't just what I heard. It was also the optics. When he got out of the car, he was going and greeting people. There were lots of hugs. He's a tactile guy. This felt rather more joyous even than when Keir Starmer made the same journey and made his first speech in Downing Street just 2 years or so ago. I didn't expect lots of detail. I think keeping it short also enabled him to talk without notes. He got accused on Friday of just reading a speech that was probably written by somebody else. This felt a bit more authentic, a bit more heartfelt, and the delivery was very personable. What really struck me was the very end sentences where he talked about positivity and he talked about bringing back hope. Keir Starmer was a bit of a doom and gloom man. He told us how bad things were. Just in that very few minutes there, Andy Burnham gave a sense of how he would like things to be better. Of course, the devil is in getting that done, getting it through his party and winning the voters back who have been leaving Labour and Labour policies in droves.
I guess that's important points you're making about, I guess, conveying this more hopefulness to the public. Though, do you think he was a bit wary of over-promising at this point in time, Mark Shanahan?
Yeah, and I think the way he got around that was by promising nothing. If we actually go back and dissect those words in detail later, there will be an amount of aspiration, there will be some signposting to what's to come in the future. But other than ending rough sleeping, which is something that he has campaigned for a long time for and actually achieved quite a lot of success with in Manchester, we didn't get any specifics. This has been quite a clever speech because while opposition parties will jump on it now and say he said nothing, there is actually very little substance for them to tear into and disagree with.
I'd like to put a question from our audience to you, Mark Shanahan. Someone's written here, their name is Ben Franklin 9519. Burnham should call for early elections. Labor's present majority was Starmer's work, not Andy Burnham's. Have they got a point there?
I wonder if he made that same comment about Rishi Sunak or about Liz Truss neither of whom ran an election when they came into office, or John Major when he took over from Margaret Thatcher, or all the way back to when Stanley Baldwin became Prime Minister in 1930. We have a long history of a change in party leaders during parliaments and during a time of government. Labour has a huge majority. The Prime Minister is the first among equals. We don't have a presidential system. We're not voting for an individual when we go to the polls in the general election. The mandate that Andy Burnham has is the mandate that Labour gained by winning the general election in 2024. The really interesting thing was that Labour won that election with just a third of the electorate voting for them. And it was actually the complete collapse and implosion of the Conservative Party that allowed Labour to get quite such a huge majority. It's now for Burnham, up until the time of the next election, to show us that Labour deserved that majority and are actually acting in the interests of and the benefit of the people who voted for them.
OK. Birgit Mass, back to you at number 10. The new Prime Minister's in place in the building behind you. Tell us what happens now.
Well, what's really interesting, and that will also give us a little bit more of an indication on what his policies will be, it will be who he appoints in the cabinet. So he hasn't really made clear who are going to be the foreign secretary, the home secretary, and also the chancellor. So these are big decisions, and we're expecting him to announce a cabinet actually today. So from there we can see you know, for example, when we are talking about energy policies, is he going to make the energy secretary Ed Miliband? He was under Keir Starmer. Is he going to be chancellor? That is a crucial decision and something that people will be awaiting for. Or what about the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, the former Home Secretary, who is more on the right of the party, very strict. Course to contain immigration into the country. What role is she going to have? So people will be looking at these appointments, and that will be the next highlight of the day here in London and in Downing Street, because we will see these people go in and out of Downing Street here just where I am.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Birgit. We'll leave it there with you and stay with Mark Shanahan. But thank you so much to our London correspondent, Birgit Maas, who has been standing outside number 10 Downing Street as Andy Burnham gave his first speech as new British Prime Minister. Thanks a lot, Birgit. We'll stay with you, Mark. And Birgit was mentioning there, I guess, the pressure that Burnham is under when it comes to immigration. We've seen a big boost in support for the anti-immigration reform party of Nigel Farage. How does Andy Burnham plan to try and see that off a couple of years before general elections, while also, I guess, addressing people's concerns over irregular migration?
Yeah, he's got to change the narrative. The reality is the number of people coming to the UK on small boats has dropped hugely. Legal immigration has also dropped hugely by about 80% in the last few years since the heights under, not Labour, but the Conservatives under Boris Johnson. There was a Boris wave of immigration after he was elected, or after he came to power and then won an election in 2019. So it's changing the narrative to reflect evidence rather than the political points made by Nigel Farage and his party. He can probably afford to go on the attack against reform at the moment. They're not in a strong position. For the first time, their leader, Nigel Farage, is coming under significant scrutiny, not just from politicians, but for the first time, really, from our media in the UK about where his money is coming from. He had a £5 million gift that he can't quite account for properly. He's stood down. He's resigned his seat. He's no longer a member of Parliament in Clacton. And none of the other parties are standing against him at the moment, the other major parties. His major opposition is a candidate called Count Binface. And there is every possibility at the moment that the comedy candidate may well win. So Farage is wounded at the moment politically. And this is actually Burnham's opportunity just to change the narrative, to change the weather making of politics here. Immigration remains a big issue, but it is by no means the biggest.
I guess it really depends on what polls you're looking at to see the success of Count Binface, but we've been covering that here on DW, and yeah, we do have some content on that on our platforms. I wanted to ask you, Mark, a little bit about Andy Burnham's 10-year plan for Britain, what he briefly mentioned in that speech a couple of moments ago. He's not the first Prime Minister in recent times to have a view of what was going wrong with the economy and outlay an ambitious plan to fix it. And I'm thinking here particularly of Liz Truss, who spectacularly failed when she essentially crashed the financial markets and had to quit after 50 days in office or so. Can Burnham deliver on his agenda without suffering a fate like that?
It's going to be a really interesting one because he stood up on Friday and talked about how neoliberalism had failed the West and had failed the UK in particular for the last 40 years. He talked about the impacts of deindustrialization and all of those issues around. It's quite different from Liz Truss, who was just utterly embracing neoliberalism and just wanted to turn the face of the country over to the mood of the markets. Not even the markets liked that. And we had a short-term crash and she just didn't survive. Her ambitious, ideological, libertarian view of the world just didn't match up to reality. And if the markets aren't in support of you, your time in government is going to be ever more difficult. I suspect Burnham will have learned from that. I think he will be a bit more cautious, but I don't think he'll be as cautious as Keir Starmer and his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, have been. They've been very constrained. They set very tight fiscal rules. I expect that Burnham will try and flex those as far as he can. He's going to do some things that won't please his party. He's already talking about opening up some more licenses for drilling in the North Sea for oil. Seems to have pleased Donald Trump, quite interestingly there. But he needs to raise revenue to be able to put it back into the economy. He's looking to decentralize, to move functions out of London. He's looking to give more powers to mayors, so much more powerful regional government around the country, and to rebalance. Traditionally, so much of our investment has gone in to the southeast of the country, to London and the home counties around it. And he wants to spread that investment further into the north, the west, the east, as he said, into Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. That is very ambitious. We've got no detail as to how he's going to do it. But if he can pull that off, then he has got a good chance of winning the next election.
And I wanted to ask you too, you just mentioned Donald Trump, and we've had a couple of questions about Andy Burnham and Donald Trump and their potential relationship. I mean, when you look at it, as we've been saying, Keir Starmer was the most unpopular Prime Minister in decades. He was well regarded internationally, and he had to deal with, I guess, the turmoil of Donald Trump and the intense pressure from him to join the conflict in Iran. And I just want to talk about something that you tweeted, Mark Shanahan, alongside all of the opinions about the World Cup, which we won't go into. But you've tweeted the best strategy for dealing with Trump at the moment for Andy Burnham is to keep him at arm's length. Could you just talk us through what you mean by that?
Yeah, and so Keir Starmer got a reputation in the UK as the Trump whisperer, that he used flattery to try and get an understanding of Trump, to try and get on his good side. My research is actually into the American presidency, and I'm working on a new book on Trump at the moment. And it is fascinating what is emerging from that. Trump doesn't have friends. He doesn't really value political allies. He is capricious in the way that he acts, and he will always act in his own self-interest. What I meant about Burnham keeping a distance is Trump has got his own problems at the moment. The midterm elections are coming up in 3 months' time. While Trump is not on the ballot paper himself, his Republican Party is. He's in a very unpopular war of choice, which is not going anything like as well as he would hope it would. It's having an effect on the economy at home. Gas prices, petrol prices are rising again. The cost of living is rising in the US. His polls are tanking. He is well down in the 30s in terms of presidential approval. Andy Burnham would do well not to get sucked into that vortex because it is only spinning in one direction, and that direction is downwards. Trump will slash and burn, and Burnham would do well to keep well on the margins of any of that activity.
We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for giving us your insights today, Mark. That was Dr. Mark Shanahan, Research Fellow in Politics and International Relations at the University of Surrey. And earlier we heard from Birgit Muss, standing outside number 10 Downing Street. She is, of course, DW's London correspondent. Mark Shanahan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was Andy Burnham's first speech as Britain's new Prime Minister. Tell us what you think. Can he turn things around for Labor where Keir Starmer really couldn't? Is this the fresh start the party's been hoping for, or is it just another face in the revolving door of number 10? Let us know what you think in the comments. If you like this stream, please do hit that like button. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I'm Jared Reid in Berlin. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.